I look at Teymur.
Okay, Saleh, so first of all, to start, I would like to know a little bit about you and how you got started into art.
Well, it was back during the last years of war, and I got accepted to do an MBA in a very important university abroad. And of course, going to do an MBA back then in a prestigious university meant for me that I will not be back, because Lebanon was at war and there was nothing to come back. And my father, I'm the only son of my parents, and he said, no, of course you have to come back. This is your country and you cannot leave. So of course you can go and do your master's, but you have to come back. I thought, doing a master in corporate management to come back and work in a small country with, and at that point in time I thought, no, I prefer to stay here, since I have to stay here for family reasons. And in this case, let me do a project that means to me. Back then in 1989, there was not a single gallery in the whole Beirut, because the only two galleries that were functional back then were in Jounieh, and Beirut itself, there was no galleries. So I was doing my MBA in Beirut, and I thought, if I open a gallery, there is no gallery, so that means no competition. In my managerial mind, it sounds like an interesting project, because I have the time to learn without having any competition. So I put a 3-5 years plans about how I would like to meet. From the very beginning, I had the vision of a long-term project that wanted a little bit to approach the idea of, if you want, Beirut was the center or the capital of the Arab world in art before the war, and back then there was no other city that has filled this void. So I thought I will open a gallery that will play like the role of a one-stop shop where you can meet many Arab artists in one place. This is how it started, and it went into now we are on our 6th 5-year plan, how it evolved in 25 years. And now I'm starting my 6th 5-year plan.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you, like you said, Beirut now is one of the places where art in the Arab world is coming up. What about the Beirut Art Fair, the Art Week?
Sure, I must say, from 2006-7, after the Israeli war of 2006, Beirut was becoming more and more marginalized, and there were a lot of regional cities that were playing a big role. So there was a lot of things happening in Cairo, in Amman, in Damascus, but of course in Dubai, in Sharjah, in Doha, and Abu Dhabi. So in fact, it was more like, it's not anymore, each city of those is playing a certain role. And Beirut was, for me, had to reinvent itself. And I think in that instance, it could be really the incubator, because we have the universities around in Beirut that are being able to have a comprehensive socio-political, anthropological approach to the history of art in this region. And they can be this incubator of artists and careers that are related to art, preparing curators, historians, critics, restorers, etc. So I think nowadays this is where we're heading. Of course, the Beirut Art Fair is a happy moment of the year. Comparatively speaking, the Dubai Art Fair or the Abu Dhabi Art Fair are far more important, given they are more like regional platforms with very important financial aspect. Beirut Art Fair is more like a local art fair, but at the same time, it's a 1 week of the year where a lot of activities happen and give a lot of impetus to the city.
Good. And this year at Photomed Lebanon, you exhibited and my father's work, Waddah Faris, his pictures. How did you meet him, and how did you discover this side of him?
When I started considering opening a project of an art gallery back in 1989, I made a tour of the people who were the most knowledgeable about the art scene. So I met most of the artists of the period, most of the art critics, most of the gallerists, and of course Waddah Faris remains one of the top actors in this field. He was probably the top gallerist before the war in Beirut, and he continued his project in Paris, making 11 FIAC in a row, and of course always defending art of this region. So for me it was extremely important to meet this person that everybody liked and everybody talked about, and I made the effort to meet him, and I met him. And he was extremely important in my career, because back then the question I used to ask everybody was, whom in your humble opinion is the most important Lebanese artist? And there was always a lot of different answers. But what was extremely, the thing I remember very well, I asked one of the foremost art critics back then, who are the artists that you think are most important? He gave me three names. And then I said, what about Arif Reyes? And he said, no, I don't think Arif Reyes is an artist. Okay, I took the note, and then later on I met Waddah Faris, and same question. Who do you think are the most important Lebanese artists? And he answered without blinking, Arif Reyes. He has this theatrical way of putting things. So my reaction was, if two of the most important actors in the Beirut art scene are so different on defining one artist, so there is a place for me. This is how I took it back then anyway. And of course, later on, I studied very well, met all the artists, and today I think Waddah Faris was pretty right actually in his by saying that Arif Reyes is probably one of the most important Lebanese artists, because he is, and I think time will prove that. But this is how I met him first. And of course, the relationship kept on growing. And when he started coming back more often to Beirut, it was like the mentor that anyone dreams of. For me, he is somebody who is a witness of that time, a witness of that history, a very generous person to share everything he accumulated through the years, a great mentor that somebody like me really, I'm very grateful to him. And at the same time, we agreed that one day I would like to do an exhibition about these golden days of Beirut as seen through the eyes of a major witness who lived it, namely Waddah Faris.
Now that you were saying that you used to ask people, what's the most important Lebanese artist? Who do you think it's the most important?
Actually, I must say I developed an attitude over the years that I don't like superlatives. I don't think there is a most important. But there are very important artists, and there is no doubt that we have some great masters like Salwa Rawda, like Arif Reyes, like Salih Badwayhi, Shafi Aboud. I don't want to forget, I mean, there are plenty. It's a history. This is a country that is rich with its history of art. There are some other living artists, and I mean, each one of them has left his mark in one of the schools of art between the abstraction, the figuration, the expressionism, and it's a pity to put it in number one or number two, but I think you have put this sphere of great artists, for sure.
How was it for you to open your first gallery here, Agial, the year that the war was about to end but still going on?
When I opened, actually, it was still on. No, we were working in this gallery. I was practically pushed by the insurance company to choose a place that is a shelter at the same time, because they wouldn't give me an insurance if the place has no shelter attached to it. So I had to look to a space that was also a shelter, and we had to spend a lot of money in order to put armed steel doors in order to protect, if you want, from bombs. And so by the time we finished and we opened, it was the latest days of the war, but it's in a volatile country like Lebanon, it never ended. I mean, since back in the early 90s, we had a war in 99, another one in 2006. I mean, it goes up and down. Of course, it's relatively safe in Beirut, but it remains a volatile place. So we started. It's my country, it's my city, I want to stay here. The decision was always, shall I stay or shall I leave? And I took the decision to stay. And now that I'm staying, I work with it as this is it, let's deal with it as it comes. We love it with all its defects. This is Beirut, my city. A very strange place, but we're very attached to it. I'm particularly attached to it.
Here in Lebanon, there are several spots that are basic for culture. Which ones to you marked you ahead? Like, for example, today we visited Rashana, Baalbek. Which spots do you think?
Again, I don't like the superlative, but I think each one has its own uniqueness and its own charm. For me, Rashana is a place full of energy. Those Bosbous family are incredible. The beauty of the landscape is fantastic. Baalbek is Baalbek. It's one of the most beautiful archaeological remains in the world, no doubt. You have the Sursuk Museum, you have plenty. I mean, it's a country that, with all the defects and all the volatility I was speaking about, nonetheless has a lot of attributes. It has a fantastic landscape. The mountains are really gorgeous. Going to this cedar reserve is incredible. It has history, plenty of history. So, all of it makes Lebanon this a very energetic place, because it's hybrid. It takes a little of everything from all the civilization. You want Mesopotamian, you want Roman, you want Greek, you want Mamluk, you want Ottoman, colonial French. It's a city that is very, very contemporary at the same time. It's also completely stuck in its own history, which makes this blend of the Lebanese that makes us what we are today.
And going back in time a little bit, you were born before the war. What memories do you have of that period?
I must say I was born in 1967, which means during the war I was still a little kid to really say I remember a lot. But of course I grew up in an environment that remembers this a lot. So my parents, my grand family, the friends, professors, readings, I love reading. So images, photos. I had the chance to still know about the Beirut that everybody liked from before the war. I lived it through the experiences of other people, but it was very close. I lived it with people who experienced it first time in their life. Not that I am reading about something that was very back then. It was like 5 years before, 10 years before, but the people are still young and energetic. So yeah, I knew it. I grew up here. I never left except for small travels, but I never emigrated. I stayed here, and it's my place. I feel most comfortable. I've been around in many places, but I would definitely choose Beirut again and again to live in.
In a book on Ayman, you're exhibiting him now, I read that art is a way to witness and give awareness. Do you believe so?
Sure. I am one of those people who believe that although art has a decorative aspect, for sure, it's something that is very nice and that could be extremely decorative. But for me, art is mostly an expression for change. The beauty of it, at least in my humble opinion, is its capacity to express ideas related to a certain place at a certain time with certain people and their need to really change things. And art is probably one of the rare disciplines where somebody can aim for change, because you can do that usually through religion. If you manage to find some religious books that ask for change, it will be easy, but that's practically impossible. You can do that through politics. If you have a very powerful king or president who can make change, yes, they can make change. But the average people like us, what can they do? Well, through art, in the isolation of their ateliers, they are capable of expressing their ideas for change, and these ideas are like snowballs. They go from the artist to 10 people around him, and the 10 people make it 100, and the 100 become 1,000. It's a slow way to achieve change, but it's definitely one of the most, accessible way to do change. And I firmly believe that art is one of those places that can be the catalyst of change.
The other day we were walking by the street here in Beirut, and we saw a graffiti that said, "Before I die, I want Lebanon to be," and three full dots, or 3 stops. What would you like Lebanon to be?
Well, it's a very complicated question, but I think Lebanon is in a very interesting place because it's in itself a firm example of tolerance and cohabitation. I think that people have the tendency to kill each other because of righteousness. They believe they are superior, they believe they know more, they are more or less intelligent, and that's really mostly about ego. I think we have the same blood and we're all humans, and I wish the world was more open to everybody. But at least there are examples where people have lived together, and Lebanon is one of those places where you had Muslim, Christian, Jews living together, so on the religious ground, but also you had people coming from Oriental background and from Western education living together. It's a place that shows that cohabitation can happen. People are the same. It should stay to give this example of tolerance. And in fact, I was asked one day about the difference between the word tolerance in English and its translation in Arabic, which is tasamuh. And I think the Arabic word is much more expressive, because tasamuh in Arabic is on the root of ta'adul, tawazun, which means you have two parties that are tolerating each other, not somebody tolerating another, you know, because when you say I am tolerant, it already understates that there is a superior party and another lower party. I think if you want to really live tolerance, people have to accept the other with its own difference, with his own difference. This is what makes the beauty of the world, its plurality, its diversity, but that means also accepting that people are different and they have other way of living. So really believing that your way is superior is extremely arrogant. I think the beauty of the world is its diversity in cuisines and music, in language, in poetry. And Lebanon is one of those places where you can really see that. It can happen.
And to finish up, I'd like to pick your mind. And when you walk down the streets of Beirut, there are buildings with still the scars of the war. And next to it, you can see a luxury hotel that is being built. How do you see this? Because to my point of view, it's like there are two cities in one. How do you see this?
Well, it's interesting to look at it this way, but because I lived here and I witnessed a little bit the restoration of this city, bits and pieces, there were a lot of theories about this. It's about how do you face the concept of reparation. You know, you have had an accident and now you're caught in here. Would you like to continue your life living with this accident, or would you like to do a plastic surgery and cover it and consider it never existed? It's this idea of living with the reparation. Some people would consider you cannot forget, you should not forget. This is part of you. You live with your scar, you know. Some other would say, no, I don't want to live with my scar. And again, I am not one of those people who would like to think that you have this condescending attitude, I'm right and he's wrong. These are different approaches. Sometimes those people are right, sometimes those people are wrong. And I truly believe that we need to live in the negotiation of that what makes sense in an ethical way. In these times where we are witnessing dark times, where we are witnessing escalating fundamentalism in everything, in everywhere, it's extremely important to learn how to really negotiate ethically the advancement of humans and of civilization. You know, civilization is all about how to negotiate like a marriage, you know. If you don't want to make, you know, how do they call it, no, to accept sometimes some things here and there, it can fail. It end up in a divorce, and maybe a better divorce. Or you decide to make it happen, to make it happy. So of course you have to accept things that you don't like, because later on you will have the things that you like. And it's this kind of continuous nice negotiation, in as far as it's always looking towards happiness, more happiness. We should not forget that this is our ultimate objective, to be happier.
Thank you very much, Saleh.
Welcome. Voilà. I look like a philosopher, but